A heroic member of the LNER staff remains in a life-threatening condition, says British Transport Police, following a mass stabbing on a Cambridgeshire train last night. The victim has been described as nothing short of heroic. 11 people were treated in hospital after the horrifying attack on board a train travelling from Doncaster to London King's Cross. Police said this evening that one person is being treated as the only suspect, and that there is nothing to suggest that the attack was terrorism. Passengers suffered from 14 minutes of terror, with no escape until the train made an emergency stop at Huntingdon Station. I am now joined by barrister Stephen Barrett. Welcome to the show. Hi. Round of applause. It's a bit weird getting a round of applause on the back of that.
It's a bit weird.
Look, when something like this happens, and certainly in a week like we've seen of tragedy compounding upon tragedy, it feels like when you're watching the telly, when you're being on social media, that we as a population are being managed.
Yeah.
And it's not a nice feeling.
No, it's infantilising. It turns us into little children. And we as a country really do need to push back against this. I think there are signs of it, because this time I haven't seen anybody really come down on social media and falsely claim, that so-and-so started anything. I mean, I suppose there wasn't an outburst, so there was nothing to falsely accuse people of starting, so that may play a part in it. But with the Southport last year, things were very different, and the atmosphere felt very different, very febrile. As humans, we have to accept that we are just an ape, and we're not always a terribly rational ape. And I don't think our reaction to Southport last year was terribly irrational. I have to say, I don't think the government handled themselves very well at all. Now, I do blame the bollard for largely causing the problems with Southport, because he simply didn't engage in an emotional response. I suppose this time he saved us, because he hasn't even tried to pretend that he has emotions. So he hasn't actually gone to Huntingdon for 19 seconds and laid a plastic wreath like he did at Southport. But at Southport, he literally just stayed out of it. But I think we self-censor too much. I think we worry too much about contempt of court rules and contempt of court laws. When Rudy Cabral pleaded guilty, I felt able to speak completely out about him. And I talked to a fellow lawyer who was much more conservative and concerned than I was, saying, oh, well, they might accuse you of contempt of court because you'll be influencing the judge. And I just literally said to him, if you honestly think my social media can impact a High Court judge, then we have weak and pathetic High Court judges. Thankfully, along came Mr. Justice Goose, who proved me absolutely right. The idea of a tweet or a Facebook post by anybody impacting Mr. Justice Goose is clearly tosh. And in Oxford recently, at a trial of a migrant, there was a very forthright female judge. Forgive me, I forget her name, which is I do genuinely feel embarrassed about. But she was brilliant, because she just said, I don't care about what's on social media. I will run this trial. I will tell the jury what to do. The jury will do what I say. There will be no risk of derailing the trial. And we really need to be much more tough about this, much more robust. I mean, if Axel Ruby de Cabana had not changed his plea and then had tried to argue that that somehow his trial had been prejudiced when we caught him at the scene, that would just be monstrously pathetic.
So, just to explain to people who don't necessarily work in media or anything, is that there's a sensation where people are online, whether it's misinformation or real information, but it feels like sometimes you're getting information online that you're not getting from the media. Now, we have a duty, because of contempt of court, that to be very careful about what information goes out there. So I think that may partly be responsible, but you think that sometimes people are on the side of caution?
Yeah, I think we are too cautious on this, and I think the Prime Minister has used that caution against us. I have particularly low regard for this man, but I think he has indicated and scared non-lawyers in particular about potential contempt of court. I think it's something that we should see as decent people very unlikely to commit, very unlikely to do, unless you start calling... I mean, this gentleman's not named, which is great, so how can we possibly, contempt against him, when we're not going to say that people are guilty because we believe in innocence until proven guilty? I mean, that's at the core of it, what matters, and I do believe in innocence until proven guilty, and I do want our country to keep that as a key foundational principle. I'm not terribly sure that the Prime Minister can say he clung to that principle, or the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, as she then was, when they tweeted out that the Southport tweeters were all guilty and that they'd all be rounded up. And they tweeted out that the Southport people involved in demonstrations and events defence were all guilty.
Well, the one thing they haven't posted about this week was Wayne Broadhurst, who's murdered on Monday. As far as I haven't seen it anyway.
No, again, maybe we are being saved because the Prime Minister isn't even bothering now to pretend that he has emotions. So he didn't even go to Uxbridge. He didn't even, mention this poor man who was murdered. Again, we don't know the name of the suspect, which is, I think, a really great saving grace. I know a lot of producers and a lot of media companies don't necessarily have lawyers on hand when they need them. So if we don't even know the name of the suspect, the chance of prejudicing a trial against them is really, really low. I mean, that's just very low. The government tried to run this argument that, they'll prejudice against all migrants. And it's like, well, I don't think so, because just because somebody's a migrant, unfortunately, there are so many migrant crimes right now that you can't just go, I'm the jury on the migrant who committed, an awful thing, because I'm afraid, terribly, that there are lots of juries who are going to have to listen to lots of cases involving lots of migrants who are doing awful things because we are importing dangerous men, because we are a stupid country. I mean, I just don't know any other thing that I can possibly say.
Well, talking about, this event that happened, I think there's a lot of fear out there. A lot of people, everyone takes the train. People can imagine themselves very easily in such circumstances. But there's obviously a huge disconnect between the people who rule us, who aren't necessarily going to be facing those same concerns.
I think that's a really key point, and I think this is something that we should absolutely bear in mind. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has professional armed security. The Prime Minister has professional armed security for reasons I simply don't understand, given that Boris used to ride around on a bike. The Mayor of London has, professional armed security and armoured cars. That means they live differently from us. And the Victorians, who had suffered the first political assassination, and it was in living memory of a Prime Minister. It's the only, you get asked it in pub quizzes, it's the only Prime Minister who's ever been assassinated. They remembered that, and they didn't want any of the security infrastructure, because they knew that once elites start living behind gated communities, once they start living distant from ordinary people, you're actually creating a time bomb. And to the Victorians' mind, that was the mistake of the French aristocrats. That's what the French did wrong. That's what caused the French Revolution, and they were damn well not going to have that here. So they didn't have glass in Parliament to protect them. They had an open public gallery. I mean, there were numerous attempts to assassinate Queen Victoria. Did they go mad on security for Queen Victoria? No. They knew that elites and ordinary people have to live amongst each other and not feel like they're special and disconnected, because otherwise they'll make the mistake, and ultimately the people outnumber the elite. And that's a simple truth. So personally, I'd get rid of the barriers on Downing Street. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but there's an absolutely grotesque fence now at the Houses of Parliament, which is ours, belongs to us constitutionally. We have every damn public right to go in it, forgive my language, but we do. That should not be there. And all of these armed officers, bless them, who are protecting all of these individuals, probably need to go. And the Home Secretary probably needs to use public transport. So that the threat to us of using public transport is shared by our elite. And obviously, I don't want anything bad to happen to any of our politicians. You've got a studio audience, and I can see them, and I'm telling them I don't want anything bad to happen to them either. But until we get this idea that we're all one people living as one country, they're not going to be in any way motivated to fix our problems.
Or maybe we just start on a smaller scale, where Sadiq Khan goes out with a mobile phone.
Yeah.
In public.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck, Sadiq.
Then we can move on from there. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Please, a round of applause for the barrister, Stephen Barrett.